This tutorial is for students who have attended the Harrisburg Area Community College Microsoft Excel 2007 Basic Workshop. This tutorial will cover the independent practice activities at the end of Unit 5 and Unit 6 in your textbook. I'm currently looking at page 5-42 in the textbook at the independent practice activity on the bottom half of the page. Step number 1 says open practice format and save it as my practice format. So I'm going to come up here to the Office button and choose Open. In my student data folder, I'm going to open up Unit 5, and we're working with a file called Practice Format. I'm going to stop off here for a second and save it as my practice format, just so that we have a backup copy in case something goes wrong. So I'm just going to sneak the word my in front of that. Whoops. Let's try that again. There we go, my practice format. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Now, the purpose of this particular independent practice activity is to go back through a lot of the basic formatting that we talked about on the Home tab in the ribbon in class throughout Unit 5. So the first thing in step number 2, they ask us to format A1 as Times New Roman bold, 18 points, and center it across the range of A1 through E1. So I'm in A1, which appears to be the main title of the worksheet. They're suggesting that we change the font to Times New Roman. So I'm on the Home tab. It's currently in Arial. I come down alphabetically here and find Times New Roman. Size 18. Changing the font size here through the font group on the ribbon. And bold. Now they want me to center it over the range of A1 through E1, and that does span the width of the worksheet data. So I'm going to highlight or select A1 through E1. And then over in the next group on the ribbon, the alignment group, I'm going to click on Merge and Center. Now step number 3 says format A2 as Times New Roman italic 12 point and center it over the range of A2 through E2. So in this subtitle here, I'm going to choose Times New Roman. And again, you can type to index in the font list as well. I just decided to use the scroll bar. Italics and a size 12. Again, all coming from that font group on your ribbon. And then of course merge and center it so that it matches up with the main title. Moving over to the alignment group, clicking Merge and Center. It says format the range of A4 through E4 as bold and apply a heavy border below it. So A4 through E4 coming across here. Main headings here in the data, they would like us to bold that, so that's up here in the font group. And put a heavy border below. What they're talking about here is also in the font group, the split function border button. They want us to put a heavy bottom border. So we'll call it thick bottom border. There we go. Click away from that. It says add a thin border below row 12. So I'm going to select A12 through E12. Come back up again to the Borders button. And we'll go with this thin bottom border. There we have it. Step number 6 says center the contents of the range B4 through E4 within their cells. So what they're talking about here, B4 through E4, centering within the cell. That's in our alignment group. And that's just your basic center button. You'll see a little bit of shifting there. And then it says in step number 7, resize column A so that you can see all the names in the column. Now in class we talked about manually readjusting column width by bringing the mouse in between the two columns. And you can see this black double-headed resize arrow that I have. You can click and drag manually, but also don't forget about autofit. It's a nice little feature. If I put my mouse back up here in between columns A and columns B, I get a black double-headed arrow. I can double-click, and what that's going to do is find the widest entry in column A and autofit the contents to it. Step number 8 says format the range of D5 through D12 as currency with 0 decimal places. So D5 through D12 would be the salary figures. I have those highlighted or selected. And if I come up here into the number group, the next group on the ribbon, We do have a lot of pre-made choices here that are very typical of an average end user in Microsoft Excel, but since they're asking for no decimal places, what I'm going to do is instead of just choosing currency here, I'm going to dig a little deeper and come to the bottom of the list into more number formats, which will take us into the Format Cells dialog box. Now, you guys know you can right-click and kind of get into this a little bit more quickly, but we're going to go with currency, and we're going to back the decimal places back down to 0. Click OK, and you'll see that only those cells that were selected have encountered the change. Step number 9 says format the range of E5 through E12 as percentages with no decimal places. Select those. There is a % button here in the number group. Also going to find it in the drop down. But since they're asking for something specific in regards to decimal places, I think I'm going to go right back into the number tab of the Format Cells dialog box by choosing More Number Formats. I'm going to choose percentage, back the decimal precision down to 0. All right. Step number 10 says deselect the range and compare your work to Exhibit 5-14, which is located on page 5-43 of your textbook. It says apply a table style of your choice to the data. So we can select the data. That's going to be a selection from A4 through E12. And we can come up into the Styles group, choose Format as Table, and you can pick whichever one of these you prefer. It's going to pick up the range of the table, and we'll click OK. Step number 12 says Update and close the workbook. So I'm going to save this file using the Save button in the Quick Access toolbar up by the Office button. And then I'll come to the Office button and choose Close. Moving on to the independent practice activity at the end of Unit 6. This is on page 6-23 of your textbook. Step number 1 says Open Practice Printing and save it as My Practice Printing. So I'm going to come up to the Office button and choose Open. I'm in Unit 6 of my Student Data folder. I'm going to open Practice Printing. I'm going to stop off at the Office button, do a Save As, and just incorporate the word My at the beginning of that. Step number 2 says Preview the worksheet. If I go to Office button, Print Preview, they note that the data appears on 2 pages in step number 2, and it certainly does. It's in a portrait layout, and columns name through July are on page 1, and then August through commission end up on page 2. Step number 3 says return to normal view and change the orientation of the printout to landscape. So we're going to close out a print preview, back in normal view, and they want us to change the orientation of the printout to landscape. Now, to change page layout, there's a page layout tab located in the ribbon. So activate the Page Layout tab. Find the group called Page Setup. And Microsoft has taken a lot of the things that were in the Page Setup dialog box and brought them to the surface in this Page Setup group. One of the buttons, Orientation. So we're going to switch this over to Landscape. Now you're in normal view, so you're not going to see any change on your screen. So you'll notice that step number 4 says scale the printout to fit 1 page by 1 page tall. So first thing we probably want to do here is go back into Office button, back into Print Preview, and you can see that the printout is still on 2 pages. Now we have name through November on page 1, but the second page contains December through commission. So the book is suggesting at this point use the Fit To option, scale it back to 1 by 1. Now, do note, anytime you do that, you are going to compromise your print size. So anytime we take data that's on more than 1 page and push it back to 1 page, we're going to see reduced percentage in the scaling. So the good news is, while you're working in Print Preview, you can always get into Page Setup through the Contextual Print Preview ribbon, which is nice. So I'm going to go to the Page tab on the Page Setup ribbon, and I'm going to use the scaling group. I am going to fit it back to 1 by 1, but notice we're going to lose some percentage here. When I click OK, you'll see the data does in fact all fit on 1 page, but I'm going to sneak back into Page Setup just to show you. You're down to 83% now. So you have to determine whether that's something that's okay for you to do within your environment. Some other things you might have done, maybe reduce the margins a little bit to see if you could get more data to fit on. You may have wanted to go in and rearrange the page breaks in some manner so that the data could print on multiple pages. So we have lost significant zoom size here by using this Fit To option. Now, step number 5 and 6 say create custom headers and footers. So what I'm going to do, I could work through page setup and go into header footer and work with custom header, work with custom footer. But the problem is it becomes difficult to see what you're doing and what effect it's having on the actual printout. So I'm going to cancel out of that, and I'm going to close out of print preview because I don't want you guys to forget about this new view that's available in Office 2007 and 2010. If we go to the View tab on the ribbon, we have this new view now called Page Layout. And I would encourage you to start to try to work in it more and more, because what it looks like to me almost is a Word document, and it becomes very easy as you're putting your worksheets together to figure out where your page breaks are. And the other thing that I like a lot about this view is that it opens up the header and footer and actually physically shows it on the page. So watch what happens here when I click to activate any area of the header. You're going to notice that there's a design ribbon, a contextual ribbon that comes up on the screen with all of my header and footer tools, and I'm going to follow the instructions in the book. They're saying in the upper left hand section of the header we should type in Outlander Spices. In the upper right hand section, Sales Division. I'm going to click away from that. Now that I've clicked back in the worksheet, you can see immediately I can see how this header is going to look. Now I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. Going to click to activate the footer. Contextual ribbon comes back up again. Monthly sales figures. And then in the right, they're requesting the date. Now this is where we actually get the opportunity to use some of the design tools. There's a group up here called Header and Footer Elements. Now if you're not seeing this, one of the culprits is you might have clicked back into the worksheet. Remember, these are contextual ribbons. They're only going to show up when you're in the context of something, so reactivate the footer if you need to. I'm going to click on Current Date. Initially, Microsoft Excel will put the date code in. Going to click above it in the worksheet so that I can actually see the current date come in. Number 7 says print preview the worksheet and compare it to Exhibit 6-8 in your textbook, which is on page 6-24. What I'm going to do is move back to normal view, because you can see in normal view you can't see your headers and footers. So 2 places to see headers and footers in Excel. That new view called Page Layout, where we were, or you can go up to Office button, Print, into Print Preview. And you'll see here in Print Preview the header and footer information that we put on the page is in fact viewing. It says to close out of Print Preview in step number 8. Step number 9 says set A3 through H18 as the print area. Now we didn't talk about this too much in class, but I'm going to select A3 through H18, which is the first column through the month of June. And on the Page Layout tab, there's an area here in Page Setup called Print Area. And I'm going to click on Set Print Area. What this will do is when we send this file to the printer, it will remember that print area and only print A3 through H18. The trick to this is to remember to clear that print area once you no longer desire to just print this range. So if you take a look in your textbook, the next thing that they want us to do, although it's implied, it's not actually written in step number 8, or step number 10 rather, is to go into Print Preview and take a look at it. So you can see that it's just going to print through the month of June. And at this point, since you've reduced the width of the printed data, you may want to center that up on the page a little bit. So in step number 10, they're talking about coming into Page Setup, going to the Margins tab, and then down in the lower left-hand corner, this idea of centering data on the page horizontally. Now they have us going into a print preview in step number 11, but we're already there, so we're fine. We can see the data has centered up. Step number 12 says Close Print Preview. Step number 13 says Update, which means save, and then close the workbook.